Talk about okay.
Well, now I want to talk about like heading into that game.
Okay, heading into the game.
We were saying, how can we talk positively about Pineda?
Okay,
because I think, and it's really bothered me that, like, listeners might have this perception of us just wanting to pick on Pineda, because I think there was a lot of podcasts where we weren't happy with what we're seeing, and we were attributing a lot of that to coaching and it being pretty square on his shoulders for some things that we didn't show any progress with, how we were changing things tactically or making the team progress throughout the 2022 season.
Yep.
I'm still trying to dig for like good examples other than Pineda being an excellent guy in terms of, being nice and trying to, like, in his heart, build culture within a team that was fractured from, a couple other coaches that didn't necessarily create a good vibe, maybe within the clubhouse with Frank de Boer and Heinze. So you got to say, well, hopefully he's done that inside the clubhouse, made everybody feel good about their job. And like, how do we get back on the front foot of rebuilding whatever his vision is?
Yeah.
And okay, we've only had a year and a half with him to let that happen. So still some rope out there heading into 2022 for Pineda to let whatever form is in his head in terms of the tactics that can lean into the strengths of the players that we have. Like we're saying, if he's identified, people who are stars, Luis Araujo, Almada, and this new striker that we'll hopefully get to see in preseason soon.
Yeah. So you might argue that, the question is, what was wrong with Atlanta United? Was it the injuries? Was it the culture in the locker room? Was it the talent on the field? Was it the coaching of the talent, or the formation, the tactics? If you simply say that one of the big problems might have been the attitude in the locker room, then you can say, maybe Pineda put his foot down and no arrows con pollo, right? We're not going to accept that. Martinez out. Anybody who was going to complain, whatever. Franco, maybe bitter attitude, gone. See ya. Moreno, gone. See ya. Right.
Yeah.
So you could make an argument that that's possibility.
Yeah.
Right?
We don't know. We don't know if any of that's true. Those are examples, like whether Moreno did or didn't have the right attitude in any situation. But if that was his stance, right, then he took it and made decisions.
Yeah, it's the one thing that we have sort of the least insight into, which is sort of the locker room culture. But if you go beyond that, you look at the team, right? You say, all right, here, I'll throw out a series of questions. Were we good in attack? Did we score goals?
No.
Were we good in defending? Did we prevent goals from being scored?
No.
Okay.
That's not what the data says.
Right. The data wasn't good. And we finished 10th place, which obviously wasn't good. Position per dollar was even worse because we were the number one paid team in the league. But here's the thing. Okay. So now if you look at the field, let's look for positives on the field, right? Were there any individual players? Sometimes when a team is going down the tubes, coach is good for an individual player, and there are players who are going the opposite way and are really making a name for them. So who do you see?
Well, I think you and I talked about it for the podcast. Like Andrew Gutman was a good example, and I think he did himself even some favors by just having a good head on his shoulders to know when to drive forward and when to be astute on the defensive side. But even so, I think we talked about it about pinching in too much and not going out and pressing the teams on the wings. There was clearly kind of what seemed to be kind of more of a compact type of defense versus going out and pressuring the guys in the wings. And so even that kind of bled into some of the things we were seeing with Gutman. But yeah, overall, I think Gutman was a positive example of a player last year that seemed to shine when he was healthy and involved.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly, of the whole team, he might be the only one who you might say his transfer price went up over last season.
And you got to say like Parata, at least momentum wise, because he had those 3 goals in the one game. There was
He scored a bunch of goals. He scored like 5 or 6 goals.
Scored like 5 or 6 goals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so good juju from him, right?
That's great for a center back over a half a season. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous.
In terms of goal scoring, yes, he did a great job.
Yeah. But yeah, and I don't think he did too poorly defensively. I think it's going to be interesting if he's the number 1 next to Miles, how their relationship forms.
Sure. So what about you, Carmen? Do you see any players who, thrived under Pineda?
Yeah. I mean, Almada, I always say him, just the fact that at least got him seen enough to get him on a World Cup
Yeah,
team.
right. Yeah, he made the World Cup squad out of that,
There's something there. But besides that, I didn't really. I mean, you're right. Gutman. Is it Gutman or Gutman? We decided
it's Gutman.
Gutman. I thought he had a good season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But besides that, I thought it was pretty.
And Almada is such a star. What I was impressed about Almada, and I think most Atlanta United fans would recognize, is like he didn't do what Barco was guilty of, which is kind of over pursuing, the talent of being able to dribble. I think we saw Almada get away from people with a quick step, the same way Miggy would, but then made a really smart decision and passed the ball into space or to somebody's feet.
His decision making is really good.
Yeah.
And even when the team wasn't going well, it didn't seem like there's a tendency when the team wasn't going well, Barco would just try to do it all.
Yeah.
And Almada didn't seem to be getting out of his game too much.
Correct.
He scored a couple of fantastic things, but by and large, he was still making decisions.
He didn't do the PT Martinez thing where he's just launching from 25 yards out.
Or even Araujo last year, who was launching from, everywhere.
Too many 25-yard shots trying to bend it into the far post with Araujo. The data says that's really hard to do unless
we had a bet about that at some level because we were talking about, as an inverted winger. And I said, if to justify an inverted winger, you need him to score. I don't know what I said. It was 3 or 5 goals or whatever.
I think I was skeptical of that when you.
I think we both were, but I think he scored 1.
He scored 1, but like you said,
but 1 is not a lot.
It's a difficult thing to score.
He scored some goals, like not a lot, but even the goals he scored, like there was only 1 that he cut inside and bent it.
Yeah, but back to Almada, I think he's very measured when he chooses to take on that difficult challenge of taking an outside shot, and he's evaluating the fact that there's not a better pass, and that's the better option.
Here's